Tonight we begin with a decision that has Pentagon officials working through the night. A decision that CIA analysts have been gaming out for weeks. Weeks of intelligence gathering, weeks of satellite surveillance, weeks of intercepted communications, weeks that have led to one undeniable conclusion: the Iranian regime is killing its own people, more than 500 dead. And now President Trump is weighing options that could change the Middle East forever. To understand what's happening right now, as you're watching this, you need to understand what's unfolding inside the Islamic Republic. Because this isn't just another protest. This isn't just another crackdown. This is something that intelligence officials are calling unprecedented. Unprecedented in its scale, unprecedented in its brutality, and unprecedented in its implications for American foreign policy. More than 500 people gone, killed by their own government. Shot in the streets, beaten in detention centers. Disappeared into a system designed to crush dissent with overwhelming force, and the world is watching. But more importantly, and this is what sources inside the administration tell us, President Trump is watching, and he's not just watching, he's calculating, he's weighing. He's considering options that, according to officials familiar with the discussions, range from diplomatic pressure to something far more consequential. Something that has Iranian leadership, for the first time in years, genuinely afraid. Now, for the past 72 hours, something unusual has been happening in Washington. Meetings that would normally appear on public schedules have been moved to secure locations. Officials who typically brief reporters have gone silent. The normal rhythm of leaks and background conversations that define this city, that rhythm has stopped. And in Washington, when the principals go quiet, it means the options are getting serious. What we know, what sources speaking to multiple outlets have confirmed, is that the National Security Council has convened at least 3 times in the past 48 hours. 3 times. That's not routine, that's not procedural, that's crisis-level deliberation and the intelligence they're reviewing. According to officials speaking under condition of anonymity, it's devastating. Satellite imagery showing security forces deploying in patterns consistent with systematic suppression. Intercepted communications revealing coordination at the highest levels of the Iranian government. And this is what has administration officials most alarmed: evidence that the death toll being reported publicly is a fraction of the actual number. More than 500 confirmed, but sources say the real number could be double that, maybe more, and President Trump, according to those familiar with his thinking, is furious. So what options are actually on the table? What is the President of the United States considering as Iranian security forces continue their bloody work? According to intelligence officials and administration sources speaking to multiple outlets, there are 4 primary tracks being evaluated. The first, expanded sanctions, not the sanctions already in place. Those have been there for years. New sanctions, targeted sanctions. Sanctions designed to hit the individuals personally responsible for ordering the crackdown, their bank accounts, their properties, their families' access to the international financial system. The second, diplomatic isolation, a coordinated campaign with allies to expel Iranian diplomats, close embassies, and make the regime's representatives unwelcome in every capital that values human rights. The third, and this is where sources say the discussions become more intense, covert support. Not military intervention, not boots on the ground, but intelligence sharing, communications infrastructure, resources that would help protesters organize, document, and survive. And the fourth option, the one that has Iranian leadership most concerned? Sources wouldn't discuss it directly, but the implication was clear. Everything is on the table. Everything. And when Pentagon officials say everything is on the table, when intelligence analysts start modeling kinetic scenarios, when secure communications between Washington and regional allies suddenly spike, that tells us something, that tells us this isn't posturing, that tells us this isn't rhetoric, that tells us President Trump is genuinely weighing actions that could fundamentally reshape the Middle East. But to understand why these options are being considered, to understand the fury that sources say is driving deliberations at the highest levels, you have to understand what the Iranian regime is actually doing to its people. Let's start with the numbers. More than 500 dead. That's the confirmed figure from human rights organizations. On the ground, 500 men, women, young people who did nothing more than demand basic freedoms. But it's not just the number, it's the method, according to reports compiled by international observers. Iranian security forces have deployed what analysts call maximum violence doctrine, not crowd control, not dispersal tactics, shooting to kill, targeting protest leaders specifically, hunting them down in their homes after the demonstrations end. They've shut down the internet. They've blocked messaging apps. They've created an information blackout designed to hide the atrocities from the outside world. But they couldn't hide everything. Videos have emerged smuggled out through VPNs and satellite connections showing security forces firing directly into crowds, showing bodies in the streets, showing the systematic brutality of a regime that has decided the only way to survive is to drown dissent in blood. And those videos, according to sources, have made their way to the Oval Office. President Trump has seen them, and what he saw, officials say, changed the tenor of every discussion that followed. This wasn't abstract anymore. This wasn't intelligence assessments and diplomatic cables. This was human beings, people who want nothing more than the freedoms Americans take for granted being murdered by their government. And the President of the United States had to decide, what is America going to do about it? The response, sources say, is already beginning. Within hours of the latest intelligence briefings, the Treasury Department began preparing new sanctions packages, not announced yet, not public yet, but in the pipeline, ready to deploy the moment the president gives the word. State Department officials have been working the phones with European allies, not asking, telling, making clear that the United States expects a unified response, that the days of hand-wringing and carefully worded statements are over, that this moment demands action, and at the Pentagon, according to officials familiar with military planning, assets are being repositioned. Now let me be clear about what that means and what it doesn't mean. Sources are emphatic that this is not repeat, not preparation for imminent military action, but it is preparation for contingencies. It is making sure that if the situation escalates, if the regime does something even more catastrophic, American forces are positioned to respond. Carrier groups in the region have adjusted their patrol patterns. Intelligence assets have been redirected. Communication channels with regional allies have been activated. And all of this is happening while Iranian state television broadcasts propaganda claiming the protests are over, claiming order has been restored, claiming the Islamic Republic has once again defeated its enemies. But the satellite imagery tells a different story. The intercepted communications tell a different story. The videos still emerging from inside the country tell a different story. The protests aren't over. The people aren't defeated. And the regime, according to intelligence analysts, is more vulnerable than it has been in decades. That's the situation President Trump is weighing. That's the opportunity and the risk that his advisors are presenting. And the decision he makes in the coming days could determine whether the Iranian regime survives this crisis, or whether history will record this as the beginning of its end. So what does all of this actually mean? Why does this moment matter more than the countless other crises that have emerged from Iran over the years? Let's start with what makes this different. First, the scale. According to analysts who study Iranian civil society, these protests represent the most significant challenge to the regime since the 1979 revolution, not the Green Movement of 2009, not the economic protests of 2017 or 2019. This is something larger, something that has spread to every major city, something that has united Iranians across ethnic, religious, and class lines, and the regime knows it. That's why the crackdown has been so brutal. That's why they've killed more than 500 people. That's why they've essentially declared war on their own population. Because the alternative, allowing the protests to continue, allowing momentum to build, is something the supreme leader cannot accept. Second, the timing. This is happening while Iran is more isolated than ever. Russian support, once a pillar of Iranian strategic planning, is consumed by the disaster in Ukraine. Chinese backing is transactional at best. The European powers who once tried to salvage the nuclear deal have run out of patience and excuses. Iran is alone, and when authoritarian regimes are alone, they're vulnerable. Third, and this is what sources say has the administration most focused the opportunity. For 40 years, American presidents have tried to change Iranian behavior through various combinations of pressure and engagement. Sanctions, diplomacy, threats, deals. None of it has fundamentally altered the nature of the regime or its hostility to American interests. But this? According to officials familiar with administration thinking, this is different. This isn't America trying to change Iran from the outside. This is the Iranian people themselves demanding change from the inside. And the question facing President Trump is whether the United States should help them. Not with military force, not with invasion, but with support, with resources, with a clear message that America stands with the people of Iran against their oppressors. That's the decision being weighed right now. That's what those late-night meetings are about. That's why officials who normally can't stop talking have suddenly gone silent. Because this is the moment that could define not just the Trump administration's legacy on Iran, but the future of the Middle East for a generation. So what happens next? What should you be watching for in the coming days and weeks? First, the sanctions announcement. According to sources, new targeted measures could be announced within days. Watch for names, specific individuals in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, specific officials in the Interior Ministry, the people who gave the orders, the people with blood on their hands. If the sanctions are broad and aggressive, that tells us the administration has chosen confrontation. If they're narrow and symbolic, that tells us caution has won out. Second, allied coordination. Watch what European leaders say and do. The administration has been pushing hard for a unified response. If you see simultaneous announcements from Washington, London, Paris, and Berlin, that's significant. That's the kind of coordinated pressure that regimes fear. But if the allies hedge, if they issue statements without action, that tells us the coalition is fractured, and the regime in Tehran will notice. Third, military positioning. We likely won't see official announcements, but watch for reports of carrier movements, watch for changes in regional deployments, watch for the kinds of signals that militaries send when they want adversaries to know they're ready. And fourth, most importantly, watch Iran, because the regime has a choice too. They can continue the crackdown and hope they can crush the protests before international pressure becomes unbearable, or they can attempt some kind of de-escalation, releasing prisoners, restoring internet access, promising reforms they have no intention of. Delivering. What they cannot do is ignore what's happening. What they cannot do is pretend this is normal. What they cannot do is assume they'll survive this the way they've survived every challenge before. Because this time is different. The scale is different. The brutality is different, the international attention is different, and the President of the United States is weighing options that could make everything different. More than 500 people have died for the simple act of demanding freedom. More will die in the days ahead. That is the horrific reality of what's happening inside Iran right now. The question that President Trump is wrestling with, the question that will define this moment in history, is whether America will stand with the people risking everything for liberty, or whether we'll watch from the sidelines while a regime drowns dissent in blood. That's what's at stake. That's why this matters. And that's why the decision being made in Washington right now could change the world. This story is developing by the hour, and if you want to stay informed, if you want to understand what's really happening, not just the headlines, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single update, and I need your help. Drop a comment below. What do you think President Trump should do? Should America intervene? Should we support the protesters? Should we stay out of it entirely? Your voice matters, this conversation matters, and the decisions being made right now will affect all of us for years to come. Share this video with everyone who needs to understand what's at stake in Iran. We'll see you tomorrow.